Spring 1955. Inside the Griffith Observatory planetarium in Los Angeles, a group of high school kids sat in darkness watching a projection about the end of the world. On screen, the Earth exploded in a violent collision with an asteroid. The narrator's voice echoed through the dome. Man existing alone seems himself an episode of little consequence. In the audience, 24-year-old James Dean sat among teenage extras, waiting for his cue. But something about those words hit him differently. The cosmic insignificance, the inevitability of death, the meaninglessness of human struggle. It all resonated with something deep and dark inside him. When the scene began, Dean didn't just play Jim Stark watching the end of the world. He became a young man confronting his own mortality. 3 months later, James Dean was dead at 24, killed in a car crash on a California highway. The planetarium scene in Rebel Without a Cause became prophetic, haunting, unbearable to watch. Teenagers who saw the film wept, not just for the fictional Jim Stark, but for the real James Dean who spoke about death with such casual certainty, never knowing how soon it would find him. This is the story of how one scene in a planetarium captured the existential terror of an entire generation. How James Dean took a simple field trip sequence and turned it into a meditation on mortality that still makes viewers cry 70 years later. This is about the moment cinema stopped pretending teenagers were innocent and started showing them as what they really were: young people staring into the void, terrified of the darkness, desperate to matter before they disappeared. Griffith Observatory sits on the southern slope of Mount Hollywood in Griffith Park, overlooking Los Angeles. Built in 1935 with funds donated by industrialist Griffith J. Griffith, the Art Deco masterpiece was designed to make astronomy accessible to the public. Its mission was democratic and optimistic. Bring the stars to the people, inspire wonder about the cosmos, show that science belonged to everyone. For 20 years, the observatory fulfilled that mission beautifully. School groups visited, families came to peer through telescopes. The planetarium shows educated and entertained. It was a place of wonder, enlightenment, hope. Then Nicholas Ray brought James Dean there to film Rebel Without a Cause, and everything changed. Ray chose Griffith Observatory deliberately. He needed a location that symbolized the larger themes of his film: the vastness of the universe versus the smallness of human problems, the search for meaning in an indifferent cosmos, the loneliness of being young and feeling invisible. The observatory, with its focus on outer space and cosmic timescales, was perfect. But Ray also understood something more practical. No planetarium had ever been used in a film before. This would be revolutionary, taking a real educational institution and transforming it into a setting for teenage existential crisis. The juxtaposition was powerful. A place meant to inspire wonder about the universe, becoming a space where teenagers confronted their own insignificance. The observatory staff was nervous. They worried the film would portray their institution negatively, associate it with juvenile delinquency, damage its educational reputation. Ray assured them the observatory would be shown respectfully, as a place of learning and beauty. He kept his promise, but he also showed how terrifying knowledge could be when you really understood what it meant. The planetarium sequence in Rebel Without a Cause begins innocently. A bus pulls up to Griffith Observatory carrying a high school class on a field trip. The students pile out, excited, rowdy, treating it like a break from classroom monotony. Jim Stark, Dean, arrives separately, the new kid, isolated, watching the other students with a mixture of longing and contempt. Inside the planetarium theater, the students settle into the reclining seats as the lights dim. The domed ceiling becomes a canvas for the night sky. The lecturer's voice fills the darkness, explaining the stars, the planets, the cosmic dance of celestial bodies. At first, the students are restless. They whisper, giggle, flirt, pass notes. The universe is just educational background noise, another boring lecture they'll forget by lunch. Jim sits alone, separate from the group, but he's listening, really listening. Then the presentation shifts. The lecturer begins discussing the end of the Earth. Not in the distant future, in cosmic time, which makes millions of years seem like seconds. He describes how the sun will eventually expand, consuming the inner planets, how the Earth will be swallowed by fire, how everything humanity has built, every person who has lived, every thought and feeling and achievement will be erased completely. The students stop giggling. The reality starts to sink in. These forgotten stories deserve to be told. If you think so too, subscribe and like this video. Thank you for keeping these memories alive. The lecturer continues, his voice calm and professorial as he describes apocalypse. The Earth will not be missed. Through the infinite reaches of space, the problems of man seem trivial and naive. Indeed, man, existing alone, seems himself an episode of little consequence. On the dome above, a visual demonstration shows an asteroid hurtling toward Earth. The collision is depicted in startling detail. The impact, the explosion, the disintegration of everything. The students watch their world end, projected in Technicolor above their heads. Jim Stark's face in the darkness shows something the other students don't feel yet. He's taking this personally. The cosmic insignificance isn't abstract to him. It's confirmation of what he already knows. Nothing matters. Nothing lasts. We're all going to disappear. As the planetarium show ends and the lights come up, the students file out, chattering nervously about what they just saw. This is where James Dean went off script. The screenplay called for Jim to exit quietly, to exchange a few looks with Judy, Natalie Wood, that would build their romantic connection. Simple, straightforward, moving the plot forward. But Dean felt something more needed to happen. During rehearsals, he'd been sitting in that planetarium, listening to the lecture about cosmic meaninglessness, and it triggered something deep in him. His own fears about death, his mother's early passing, his sense that life was short and brutal and unfair. It all came rushing up. Dean approached Nicholas Ray with an idea. What if Jim, instead of just walking out quietly, had a moment of existential breakdown? What if the planetarium show actually affected him, made him confront the terror of mortality in a way that burst out of him uncontrollably? Ray was intrigued but cautious. The film was already edgy by 1955 standards. Teenagers who didn't respect their parents, knife fights, dangerous games of chicken. Adding overt existential nihilism might be too much. Studio executives were already nervous about the film's themes. But Dean insisted. Teenagers think about this stuff, he argued. They think about death all the time. They just don't talk about it because adults don't want to hear it. Let me show what they're really feeling. Ray trusted Dean's instincts. He let him try it. The result was a piece of dialogue that wasn't in the original script, that Dean essentially created on the spot, channeling his own fears through Jim Stark. If this is all going to end anyway, what does any of it matter? We're all going to die anyway. It was nihilism, raw and teenage and terrifying. And it was exactly what the film needed. Watch Dean in the planetarium scene. His body language throughout the lecture is completely different from the other students. While they slouch and fidget and treat it like entertainment, Dean sits forward, tense, absorbing every word like it's a personal attack. When the lecturer describes Earth's destruction, Dean's Jim Stark doesn't look awed or frightened in a fun, roller coaster way. He looks genuinely disturbed. His face shows someone confronting unwelcome truth. Someone who can't unhear what he's just learned. As the other students exit, chattering and laughing to dispel the tension, Jim remains seated for a moment. The camera holds on his face, Dean's face, and you can see him processing, grappling with cosmic horror that the other kids are managing to ignore. This wasn't acting technique. This was Dean channeling his real existential terror. He'd grown up motherless, sent away by his father, always feeling unwanted and temporary. The planetarium's message, that human existence is brief and meaningless, confirmed his worst fears about himself. When Jim finally stands and exits, he's visibly shaken. Judy, Natalie Wood, notices. She's the only one who sees that the planetarium show actually affected him, that he took it seriously while everyone else dismissed it. This creates their bond. Two people who can't pretend the universe isn't terrifying. Outside the planetarium, as tensions escalate toward the knife fight with Buzz, Jim's behavior becomes more reckless, more death-haunted. He's just been told his life is meaningless. So why not risk it? Why not fight with real knives? Why not play chicken with cars racing toward a cliff? If it's all going to end anyway, might as well end spectacularly. The planetarium scene set up everything that follows. The violence, the risk-taking, the desperate search for meaning in a meaningless universe. It explained why teenagers in the 1950s felt so lost. The world told them to conform, obey, prepare for stable futures. But the universe told them none of it mattered. They were trapped between two contradictory messages, and it was driving them insane. To understand why the planetarium scene hit so hard, you have to understand what teenagers in 1955 were experiencing. This was the first generation to grow up under the shadow of the atomic bomb. They'd done duck-and-cover drills in elementary school, practiced hiding under desks in case of nuclear attack. They'd seen newsreels of mushroom clouds. They knew, in a way their parents' generation didn't, that civilization could end instantly. They'd also been sold a lie, the American dream. Work hard, go to college, get married, buy a house in the suburbs, have kids, be happy. Their parents' generation desperately wanted to believe in this vision after the trauma of the Depression and World War II. They pushed conformity, stability, normalcy with an almost violent intensity. But teenagers felt the dissonance. The world their parents described, safe, predictable, meaningful, didn't match the world they saw. The bomb could drop any second. Life could end without warning. All the careful planning and conformity and good behavior wouldn't matter if the world exploded. The planetarium scene gave voice to this anxiety. When the lecturer described Earth's destruction, when he said human problems were trivial and naive, when he showed the planet disintegrating. Teenagers saw their fears confirmed. Adults were pretending everything was fine, but the universe knew better. Nothing was fine. Nothing was permanent. Death was always coming. James Dean, standing in for an entire generation, refused to pretend. Jim Stark heard the lecture and couldn't unhear it. He absorbed the existential terror and let it show. And teenagers watching Rebel Without a Cause in theaters across America felt seen for the first time. Someone was finally admitting the truth. Yes, you're right to be scared. Yes, the world is terrifying. Yes, conformity and good behavior feel meaningless when cosmic annihilation is always possible. You're not crazy. The universe really is indifferent to your suffering. Natalie Wood, who played Judy opposite Dean's Jim Stark, was only 16 during filming. She was too young to fully grasp the existential weight Dean brought to the planetarium scene, but she understood something else: the terror of being young and powerless. Wood had been a child star since age 4, exploited by her mother, sexualized by Hollywood, never allowed a normal childhood. By 16, she was exhausted, disillusioned, desperate to be taken seriously as an actress rather than dismissed as a pretty face. Working with Dean changed her. She watched him refuse to perform conventionally, watched him bring real pain to the screen, watched him treat acting as truth-telling rather than entertainment. She tried to match his intensity in their scenes together. In the planetarium sequence, Wood's Judy sits near Jim, watching him react to the lecture. Her face shows concern, curiosity, recognition. She sees that he's different from the other boys, that he feels things more deeply, that he can't pretend the universe isn't terrifying. Years later, Wood said the planetarium scene was when she understood what Dean was trying to do with the film. He was showing that we were all scared, all pretending to be fine when we were actually falling apart. I was 16 and already felt ancient, already felt damaged. That planetarium lecture about everything ending, nothing mattering, it felt true. Wood's own life would end tragically in 1981 when she drowned under mysterious circumstances at age 43. Like Dean, she never got to grow old. Like Dean, her death seemed to confirm the planetarium's lesson. Life is brief, random, cruel. We exist for a moment, and then we're gone. Immediately after the planetarium scene, the film transitions to the knife fight between Jim and Buzz on the observatory terrace. This isn't coincidental. The fight is a direct response to the existential crisis the planetarium triggered. Buzz, Corey Allen, has been needling Jim all day, trying to establish dominance, protect his status as gang leader. Jim has been avoiding confrontation, trying to be the good new kid. But after the planetarium lecture, something shifts. If nothing matters, why avoid conflict? If life is meaningless, why not fight? The knife fight was filmed on the terrace behind the observatory's west side. Dean insisted on using real switchblades, not prop knives. Director Nicholas Ray was horrified. This was incredibly dangerous. One slip and someone could be seriously hurt. But Dean argued that the fight had to feel real. If we use fake knives, the audience won't believe it. They need to see that these kids are actually risking death. After what they just heard in the planetarium, they're testing whether life matters. The only way to test that is to risk losing it, If you want more untold stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Your support means everything to us. Ray reluctantly agreed. Dean and Corey Allen rehearsed the fight choreography extensively. But when cameras rolled, they actually attacked each other with real blades. The terror on Allen's face in some shots isn't acting. He's genuinely afraid Dean is going to stab him. Dean performs the fight like a man who doesn't care if he lives or dies. He's reckless, aggressive, almost suicidal in his willingness to be cut. When he finally knocks Buzz's knife away and throws his own blade aside, it's not mercy. It's disgust. The fight proved nothing. Violence doesn't make life meaningful. It just confirms that we're animals fighting over nothing. Buzz, trying to save face, suggests the Chicky Run, the deadly game where they'll race stolen cars toward a cliff, see who jumps out last. It's Russian roulette as teenage sport. And Jim agrees immediately because the planetarium broke something in him. He heard that nothing matters, and now he needs to test that truth against death itself. Rebel Without a Cause finished filming in late May 1955. The studio scheduled it for release in October, giving them time to edit, score, and market the film. James Dean moved on to his next project, preparing to film Giant in Texas. He never talked much about the planetarium scene publicly. When interviewers asked about Rebel, Dean focused on other aspects: the relationship with his parents, the romance with Judy, the Chicky Run. He rarely mentioned the existential themes, but friends noticed he'd become more reckless after filming Wrapped. He bought faster motorcycles, drove more dangerously, took risks that terrified people around him. It was as if channeling Jim Stark's death wish on camera had infected Dean's real life. On September 30th, 1955, Dean crashed his Porsche 550 Spider on California Route 466. He died instantly at age 24. Rebel Without a Cause hadn't been released yet. The premiere was scheduled for October 27th, exactly 1 month after his death. When audiences finally saw the planetarium scene, they experienced it as prophecy. Dean's Jim Stark sitting in darkness, listening to lectures about inevitable death, accepting cosmic meaninglessness. It played like foreshadowing. The actor who spoke so casually about how we're all going to die anyway had died before the film reached theaters. The scene became unbearable to watch. Teenagers who saw Rebel in late 1955 wept during the planetarium sequence because they knew Dean was already gone. The cosmic indifference he channeled on screen had claimed him in real life. The universe really was cruel and random. Even beautiful young stars burned out instantly. Critics who reviewed the film struggled with this dynamic. How do you evaluate a performance by a dead actor playing a character obsessed with mortality? How do you separate the art from the tragedy, when the tragedy makes the art more powerful? Bosley Crowther of the New York Times wrote, "The planetarium scene, which might have seemed heavy-handed existentialism, now plays as Dean's final testimony. He understood something about death that the living don't want to accept." After Dean's death, Griffith Observatory became a pilgrimage site. Fans flocked there to see where Dean had filmed his most iconic scenes, to stand where he stood, to look at the stars he looked at. The observatory went from educational institution to shrine practically overnight. In 1955, just after Dean died, he had commissioned sculptor Kenneth Kendall to create a bronze bust of him. Dean had seen Kendall's sculpture of Marlon Brando and wanted similar treatment. Kendall began work on the piece the night Dean was killed, working from photographs and memory. Decades later, in 1988, Kendall's bust of Dean was installed on the observatory lawn, overlooking Los Angeles, with the Hollywood sign visible in the background. The plaque reads, "This is not a monument to a rebel. Those were only roles he played." James Dean was an American original who, on a basis of high school honors, in a period of 5 years' time, rose to the very pinnacle of the theatrical profession. But of course, it is a monument to a rebel, specifically, to the rebel who sat in the planetarium and refused to pretend the universe was kind. The rebel who looked at cosmic meaninglessness and didn't flinch. The rebel who died young and beautiful, confirming everything the planetarium taught about life's brutal brevity. Today, 70 years later, visitors to Griffith Observatory still seek out the Dean bust. They take photographs with it, leave flowers, touch the bronze for luck or connection. The planetarium where the scene was filmed has been modernized, but its essential purpose remains, showing people how small they are in the vast universe. The irony is perfect. The place that taught cosmic insignificance has become permanently associated with one very significant human, James Dean, who took that lesson to heart and made it beautiful and terrible at the same time. Every generation rediscovers Rebel Without a Cause. The film has never gone out of circulation, never stopped being relevant. And every generation has the same reaction to the planetarium scene: recognition, fear, tears. Modern teenagers watching the film might laugh at the 1950s slang, the outdated gender roles, the innocent view of what constitutes rebellion. But when the planetarium scene plays, when the lecturer describes Earth's destruction and human insignificance, when Dean's face shows someone truly grappling with mortality, the laughter stops. Because the existential terror hasn't changed. Teenagers in 2025 face different threats than teenagers in 1955. Climate change instead of atomic bombs. Mass shootings instead of juvenile delinquency panics. Social media instead of conformist suburbs. But the fundamental experience is identical. Being young in a world that feels like it's ending. Being told to plan for a future you're not sure will exist. Being expected to care about trivial things when cosmic meaninglessness looms. The planetarium scene speaks to that permanent adolescent condition. The moment you realize you're going to die, your parents are going to die, everyone you love will disappear, and the universe will continue completely indifferent to your loss. That realization hits everyone around age 15 or 16. Most people learn to suppress it, to get on with living. But for a few years, the existential terror is overwhelming. Dean's performance captures that moment of realization and refuses to look away. He doesn't offer comfort or solutions. He just shows what it looks like when someone young confronts the void and can't pretend it's not there. Psychology Today published a study in 2018 showing that clips from the Rebel Without a Cause planetarium scene are still used in therapy to help teenagers articulate existential anxiety. The scene gives them language for what they're feeling. Yes, nothing matters in cosmic terms. Yes, we're insignificant. Yes, death is coming. Now what? Jim Stark never figures out the now what. He dies, symbolically in the film's ending, still searching for meaning. But the searching itself becomes meaningful. The refusal to accept easy answers, the insistence on feeling the terror fully, that's the rebellious act. Nicholas Ray wanted Rebel Without a Cause to be different from every other juvenile delinquency film Hollywood had made. Those films, Blackboard Jungle, The Wild One, portrayed teenagers as problems to be solved, threats to be contained, deviance to be corrected. Ray wanted to show teenagers as philosophers, as young people grappling with legitimate existential questions that adults refuse to acknowledge. The planetarium scene was central to this vision. It showed teenagers capable of profound thought, capable of being genuinely disturbed by cosmic truth, capable of asking questions about meaning and mortality that their parents had stopped asking. The studio wanted to cut the scene. Warner Brothers executives thought it was too dark, too philosophical, too likely to confuse audiences who just wanted an action drama about troubled teens. They argued it slowed the narrative, served no plot function, would bore viewers. Ray fought for it. He insisted the planetarium scene was the heart of the film, the moment that explained everything else. Without it, the chickie run was just reckless behavior. With it, the chickie run became existential experiment, testing whether life matters by risking death. The studio reluctantly kept the scene, but they worried it would hurt box office. They were spectacularly wrong. Rebel Without a Cause became one of Warner Brothers' biggest hits of 1955, grossing over $7 million, equivalent to $86.5 million today. Teenagers saw the film multiple times. They brought friends. They quoted the dialogue. They made James Dean their spokesperson for generational angst. And when critics analyzed why the film resonated so powerfully, they consistently pointed to the planetarium scene. It dared to take teenage fears seriously. It refused to dismiss cosmic anxiety as adolescent melodrama. It showed that the universe really is terrifying, and pretending otherwise is what's childish. Ray had been right. The planetarium scene wasn't optional decoration. It was essential truth. The planetarium scene's influence echoes through 70 years of cinema and culture. Every film that takes teenage existentialism seriously, The Breakfast Club, Donnie Darko, Boyhood, Lady Bird, owes a debt to Dean, sitting in that darkened theater, absorbing cosmic horror. The scene established a template. Use a specific location, planetarium, detention room, bedroom, as a space where young people can articulate what they really feel about mortality, meaninglessness, the terror of existence. Give them poetic language to express philosophical concepts. Trust that audiences will understand teenagers are capable of profound thought. Musicians have referenced the scene for decades. The Smiths, Joy Division, Kurt Cobain, artists who channeled teenage despair into art, all cited Rebel Without a Cause as formative. The planetarium's message of cosmic insignificance became foundational to alternative rock, punk, emo, every genre that gave voice to young nihilism. Even the visual language of the scene has been endlessly replicated. The reclining seats in darkness, the domed screen showing apocalypse, the faces of young people illuminated by projected catastrophe. It's become shorthand for moment of existential realization. When filmmakers want to show a character confronting their insignificance, they often put them in a planetarium or something analogous. Griffith Observatory has leaned into its rebel legacy. They screen the film regularly, host Dean-themed events, maintain the memorial bust. The observatory's gift shop sells Dean merchandise. Tour guides point out exact locations where scenes were filmed. The institution that worried the film would damage its reputation has instead found that the film made it immortal. La La Land, 2016, filmed at the observatory specifically because of Rebel's legacy. The romantic planetarium dance scene in that film is a direct homage to Dean and Wood, transforming the space from site of existential dread to site of romantic transcendence. Even that reversal acknowledges the original. You can only transcend the void after you've looked into it. James Dean was 24 when he sat in that planetarium and heard about the end of everything. He had 3 months left to live, though he didn't know it. He was at the peak of his beauty, his talent, his potential. He should have felt immortal. Instead, he felt doomed. Friends remember him during the Rebels shoot, talking about death constantly, making dark jokes about dying young, driving too fast as if testing fate. The planetarium scene tapped into something Dean already knew. Life is short, random, and cruel. Beauty doesn't protect you. Youth doesn't protect you. Talent doesn't protect you. The universe is indifferent. This knowledge gave Dean's performance its power. He wasn't pretending Jim Stark was scared of death. He was actually scared. He wasn't performing existential crisis. He was having one, channeling it through the character, letting the camera capture his real terror. Most actors would have played the planetarium scene with detachment. Look at my character contemplating mortality. Isn't that interesting? Dean played it as autobiography. His face showed someone who knew death was coming, who couldn't shake the knowledge, who was trying desperately to figure out how to live with that awareness. 3 months later, when Dean's Porsche collided with another car and he died instantly, the planetarium scene became his epitaph. He'd looked into the void and told the truth about what he saw there. He'd refused to pretend the universe cared about human survival. He'd been brave enough to admit terror rather than hide behind false comfort. The scene remains powerful because Dean's honesty remains radical. Our culture still desperately wants to pretend death isn't coming. Meaning is inherent. Life has cosmic significance. The planetarium scene says, no. The universe is vast and indifferent. We're tiny and temporary. Nothing we do echoes in eternity. But here's the strange paradox. The scene itself is echoed. 70 years later, Dean's performance still makes teenagers cry. The moment he captured on film has outlasted him, has become meaningful precisely because it insists nothing has meaning. His brief life, brutally cut short, proved the planetarium's lesson about human insignificance. But it also disproved it. Because we're still talking about him, still moved by him, still learning from his willingness to stare into the void without blinking. James Dean died. But the planetarium scene lives forever. And every teenager who watches it and cries is proving that brief moments of truth can matter more than lifetimes of comfortable lies. The universe doesn't care. But we do. And maybe that's enough. James Dean lived only 24 years. But those years were filled with stories the world never heard. Stories of love, pain, rebellion, dreams that died too soon. This channel exists to tell those stories, to remember not just the icon, but the man. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe, because James Dean's story isn't over. Not yet.